I was hired as a kind of like a project manager, but very quickly within the first couple of months, my boss has quit her position and I kind of took over and I became the CEO, which I know.
Well, hang on. Wait. So I missed something there. So you went from, you took this, what was your title before you took this CEO job?
Project manager.
So you went from I feel like there's like, how many titles are there between
project manager, CEO? And you did it in a few months?
This is the Startup Different podcast. From scrappy founders to 8-figure success stories, we're busting apart startup myths, getting raw insights from battle-tested entrepreneurs, and revealing the proven playbook for bootstrapping your way to 5 million with no VC strings attached. Today, we're chatting with Natalie Kaminski, the founder and CEO of JetRockets. She's a tech entrepreneur with a knack for empathetic leadership and a powerful story about building a global business while staying true to her values. Welcome to Startup Different. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Startup Different. I am Dave. That is Christopher Sinkinson, and with us today is Natalie Kaminski. Natalie, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna apologize in advance. I like to start a show with a good apology.
Very Canadian.
Yeah, very Canadian style right away. I have a bit of a cold, so for anybody listening today, if I sound deeper or if my voice suddenly just collapses, I'm hoping that either Natalie or Chris will just take this over and keep running. So, but I do like talking, so I predict at some point today, there was a little squeak there. At some point, I may lose my voice, so we'll see how it goes. So, Natalie, we just did a awesome intro of you. You've done some really, really fantastic stuff. You've had a long journey. You're currently obviously the CEO of JetRockets, which is a sweet name, by the way. I thought it was maybe like a spaceship company at first because, it's all there. But I digress. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into, entrepreneurship and founding JetRockets?
Absolutely. I'm just going to add one thing about the name. I wish there was a cool story, but honestly, it was just us searching for an available and easy to pronounce domain name.
Our first company was kind of like that. But also just I think that's a very impressive domain to get.
Yeah.
JetRockets? Are you kidding me? That's fantastic. So anyway.
You know what? There was a time when we had JetRockets.pro as our main domain name because we didn't think that anybody would ever want to have the .com. Eventually, we had to pay a hefty price tag to get.
Yeah. Oh no, the .com. That's sacred. Those four characters, that dot and .com are kind of a big deal. But fair enough. It's all good. So tell us your story.
I guess I'm gonna begin in the beginning, right? So I was born in the Soviet Union, in the Russian part of the Soviet Union, and when I was about 5 years old, my family moved to Ukraine. And that's where I spent my early childhood. And then when I turned about 10 or 9 years old, as the Soviet Union has collapsed, we moved to Israel. That's where I actually grew up. That's where, kind of my formative years took place. And I really, really enjoyed my time in Israel. And when I turned 18, I had an opportunity to take on an internship at a company in Minneapolis, of all places, right? Okay. So kind of imagine
I didn't see that coming. That was a bit of a left turn there.
I've got a lot of those. But, so I ended up moving from, sunny and warm Israel to Minneapolis in the end of October. And I was
What's the temperature in Minneapolis in early November? I feel like that is a slap in the face temperature change kind of thing.
It was. And mind you, obviously, at least back then, and I'm talking 1998, so, quite some time ago, you couldn't, there was no public transportation in Minneapolis. So I had to start driving right away.
Oh,
and
man.
I didn't know how to drive in snow or black ice. I've learned the hard way what black ice was.
Yeah,
and
for
I'm sure you know what it is.
It's a Canadian thing. I think it's on the flag, isn't it?
It's gotta be, right? Yeah. So a friend of mine actually, I had this tiny Nissan Sentra, right? And a friend of mine put a bag of sand
nice. In the trunk? Yeah, weigh it down. For sure.
Weigh down a bit. Exactly. So that was my first year moving to the United States. So I moved to the US, and right away I got a job and kind of like an internship opportunity in the IT sector. And again, we're talking 1998, which for those of you who still remember the big and scary Y2K.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I have a good Y2K story, but we can maybe save that for later. Anyway, keep going.
I'd love to hear that. But my story is, when I want to tell someone, hey, here's my Y2K story, I actually was one of those people who saved the humanity.
Hey, we're taking a short break to tell you some exciting news. Chris and I wrote a book. Surprise! It's called Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business, and it's available now. Like our show, we're trying to pay it forward to our fellow entrepreneurs. The book busts 33 business myths, tells some of our most hilarious stories, and gives you many of our best tools to build, scale, and exit your business. You'll find the book on all major online retailers, including Amazon. Check it out. We think it's pretty great. And now, back to the show.
Nice. Oh, you were one of the coders. Remember?
I was one of the coders. Yep.
Remember, that was Homer Simpson's job. Remember, he was on The Simpsons. He was supposed to protect the power plant, like in Springfield.
I don't remember this episode.
So he tries to. So then there's this big board, like somewhere. I guess. Sorry, I don't mean to hijack this, but just I love a Simpsons interlude. So and they're like looking at this big board, and they're like, oh, there's an error in Springfield. Oh, that's Homer Simpson's depot. Oh God, it's spreading. And they have like Y2K happens on The Simpsons. Anyway, so you were saving the world. You were not Homer.
I was saving the world. Saving the world. I had a very important job. I had to take a database, an existing database, and migrate it to a new database, which had 4-digit data table for the year, and write all the migration scripts and so on and so forth. And it was now in hindsight, it was probably like a super simple job to do, but it took me a very long time because honestly, I didn't know anything about databases or computers for that matter, but I was really, really good at selling myself and kind of BSing and getting the job. So
cool. Okay. So wait, you had no experience? Did you have any?
I had zero experience.
Zero.
I had absolutely zero experience. The job
that scares me a little bit. What if you didn't save the world?
I did.
Sure.
And here we are to tell the story 30 years later. It's awesome.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But it was very easy to get a job in IT because anybody would hire because people were scared. People needed programmers and database architects, etc. So my interview went something like, "Hey, could you code?" And I said yes, and they said, "Okay, hired."
Done. Cool. You're hired. I like your moxie. Right. So.
Pretty much. And so I spent the next, I think, 3 to 4 months really working like 12 hours, 14 hours a day just to get that simple task done. And I did, I did do it. I did figure it out. But I also learned 2 things about myself. One, that I did not want to be a coder. I did not enjoy that project at all.
Okay.
But I did get excited about technology. And I did get excited about where technology could take us. And again, we're 1998, we're just getting started. The dot-com boom is just about to happen, right? So it's all, we're just on the precipice of all this exciting new stuff. So I decided to stay in the IT and try and find my own path. And so I spent the next 12 years really working in a variety of different roles within the IT sector. I transitioned into QA testing because that was kind of the job back then. It was considered if you were not good at programming, you're going to be a tester. Right. So that was me. I became a tester, and I became a pretty good one at that. I wrote automated tests, and it was a very different world. Then I moved into business analysis, project management, I was a webmaster at some point in the early 2000s. Cool. I had that title, wrote a bunch of HTML code and then brought a few, very initial sets of, I guess, websites online. So I got very deep into this kind of IT world, but I worked primarily in kind of corporate, right? So I worked in companies, small and large, and really was building myself a career in the corporate world. It did not occur to me that I wanted to become an entrepreneur until much later. It was just kind of a given, I'm making money. I'm making my way up the corporate ladder. I'm feeling good about myself. Life is good.
Yeah. Like why change, right? If everything's going well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Boston. I went to school in Boston while working full time. I went to Northeastern. And then ultimately I ended up in New York in 2005. That's when I moved to New York. And I took a job with a small software development shop here in New York City that primarily serviced hedge fund of funds, and kind of like a financial services company. And my job, I was hired as a kind of like a project manager, but very quickly, within the first couple of months, my boss has quit her position, and I kind of took over, and I became the CEO, which I know.
Well, hang on, wait. So I missed something there. So you went from, you took this, what was your title before you took this CEO job?
Project manager.
So you went from I feel like there's like, how many titles are there between
project manager, CEO? And you did it in a few months?
Or was this, how big, this was very small company kind of thing?
It was like about 35 people company.
Okay. All right. That adds up a little bit more. I mean, still, I would have liked maybe a senior project manager. Okay. Very cool. That's awesome. What a great opportunity.
Well, it was, but I think it was partially because the owner of the company, the founder, the CEO was, was very kind of involved in the daily operation. And I really took over a lot of the project management, account management, and kind of just general management of staff kind of role upon myself as she left. And I was good at it. And so he kind of like, maybe it would be better if we hired the project manager and just promoted you. Right.
Yeah,
so
cool.
that was a great opportunity, which really showed me the business of software development. And that's where I spent the next 4 years being really number 2 person at that company. I've learned a ton. I've learned a ton of, what does it really mean to sell the services of software development, right? Not just to build products, but actually, become a service provider. Find the value, bring the value, demonstrate the value to your clients at all times. And I really enjoyed those 4 years. I've learned a ton. I'm really grateful for that opportunity. But then, of course, 2008 has happened. And again, if you remember 2008, lots of financial services company go out of business. The company I worked for ended up losing a lot of clients, and really kind of starting going towards shutting down. And so I decided to quit before that happened.
You jumped, you could see it was sinking, and you just jumped ship and said, I'm out of here. Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Cool.
It also coincided with the fact that I had a 2-year-old by that time. And I really was kind of looking like, what else can I do with my life to allow myself to spend more time with my 2-year-old daughter?
I love that. I think that's really important, that whole work-life balance element of it too. Like, I have 2 kids, and definitely, I think one of the reasons we ended up selling our business, I think too, was
that played a role.
I mean, like the timing was fantastic, but it was also just like, I really want to see my kids, and sometimes the pace of certain jobs, or whether you're an entrepreneur or not, doesn't allow you to do that as much. Okay. So let's recap really quick. So you made yourself in this company. You learned a lot about, custom software, a software development shop. You've jumped ship, and you're starting your own thing. And this is, I assume, JetRockets at this point.
Yeah. Well, at first I started freelancing because I couldn't really afford not having any income coming in. Right. So it wasn't a situation where I can just take some time off and figure myself out. It was more like, hey, I definitely can't be doing this anymore. What else can I do?
Right.
And again, I got fortunate with a contract opportunity presenting itself, which went from, hey, can you help us figure out the system we want to build, just as a product designer?
Yep.
And which I did. It was a short-term, maybe 3 months contract. And then the client came to me and said, listen, we love what you've designed. Could you build it for us?
Oh, cool. We love it so much. Go ahead and build it now, if you don't mind. Cool.
And as you can imagine, I said, absolutely. I got a team.
Are you the team? We'll get our best people on it, Chris, and we'll get that. I know objectively we had times where we were like, we'll get that to the developers. We'll bring them in on the weekend. And, sure enough, that's just you.
That's just Chris coming in on the weekend. The team is working on it this weekend. It's just Chris sitting in the office alone, ready to go. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So you say yes. You say yes to these opportunities. And this is the whole, this what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur. We hustle, right? And so I said, yes, absolutely, I can do this. I've got a team. And of course, I didn't have a team. But very quickly, I just found someone online. Well, the truth be told is I went on a networking event. And I met a guy who told me he had a team.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, everyone's just defrauding everyone else. All right. I got a team. You got a team. Producer Graham, you got a team here? What's going on? Oh, yeah, got a big team. Yeah, they're all back there. All right. Okay, so like another guy who has a team doesn't have a team. So you're the team now together? Or
well, no. He ends up connecting me with someone, right? He ends up connecting me with this guy online, and he says, well, this is my programmer. He has been working for me for quite some time. I think he'll be good, amazing for the job. Talk to him. If you like him, I'm going to send you more of him, essentially. I've got a whole team of these people. And I met with this person. His name is Igor. And I loved everything about him. He was young and very motivated and hungry, and he wanted to work. And I said, you know what, let's do this.
Cool.
And the funniest thing is that the guy I met at the networking event has completely disappeared at that moment. I never heard from him again.
Wow. Do you think he's watching right now?
Guy
from networking event.
I want to thank him so much.
Okay. If you're watching, guy from networking event, thank you very much for what you've done for Natalie.
That's right. Because what happened is that this Igor became my co-founder and CTO at JetRockets.
Oh, amazing. That's fantastic. Amazing. That's really cool.
Talking about serendipity, talking about magical stuff happening just randomly through weird people that you never see again.
Yeah.
And it's all about just saying yes to these opportunities, right? So we really kicked it off. We started working together with this Igor guy. And for the first couple of months, it was just the two of us. We were literally working through Skype. It was obviously before Zoom, before all these other tools. It was Skype. We were working together. I was kind of doing the project management and QA side of the things, and Igor was coding. And it was really paired programming exercise. And a couple of months later, it became evident that we needed more help. And so Igor brought in his friend, Alexei, who later became our third co-founder. So it's three of us at JetRockets. And so things just continued to work like that for maybe, a year or two. And we ended up hiring our first employee, Julia, who stayed with the company for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess, I want to say the rest is history, but that's exactly what happened, right? So one project led to another. We kept hiring on people, and then we kept growing. And we got, at our peak, we were at 75 full-time employees.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's
incredible.
Huge. That's amazing. Yeah. And this is always like a services business, right? Or do you never had a product that you guys made and that you marketed and sold? You always built for it.
So yes, we do have a product. We do have a product right now. It's called One Tribe. It's a product we built internally for our own purposes, as it often is the case.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
It's a very effective, super easy to use leave management system for remote teams.
No, cool. It definitely, you can see that be solving a problem you'd be dealing with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So.
Very, very easy to use. We do have some customers. We do have a few paying customers. Unfortunately, we're not, and I'm the first to admit what I know and what I don't know. I don't know how to sell a product company.
Right. So, this is kind of what I was going to say is I would see that as a big difference in your offering, right? It's hard to go to market with a product when you've been going to market as a service company for a long time. For us, a comparable different example is our business was in B2B. We're going to market with these higher education institutions. And then now we have this podcast, and trying to go to market in a consumer space is entirely different. And it is really, really challenging. It's a totally different set of skills. But at any rate, I think that's still really cool. And I commend you on your success. That's remarkable. Do you have if you're willing, can you share any numbers with us, or is that kind of something you don't feel comfortable talking about? Or
You mean One Tribe?
no, even just your whole company, like JetRockets.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are right now we're about $5 million revenues.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
And we are obviously profit first.
Yeah.
We're bootstrapped, profit first. This as a service company should be, and we have a good trajectory, and we hope to grow. Yeah, hope to grow.
Awesome. Further. Now, you mentioned you had one of your employees that stayed for 12 years, and that actually kind of takes me to something that I sort of found about you when I was doing a lot of research for this episode, was that you have a big focus on this empathetic leadership, and that you kind of tell this story about how you've transitioned from kind of a more, I just call it traditional management style for software developers to this more empathetic style. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that that's something that a lot of founders, for one thing, they just don't necessarily think about how to manage staff if they're early on enough. They know they need people, they just don't really know how to build a culture and work with it. And I think it'd be really interesting to hear that how you made that transition and why.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Let's call the spade a spade. It wasn't just more traditional. It was, I'm Russia-born, Israel-raised.
Yeah, sure. It was tough. It was tough leadership. I feel
exactly. It was just get this done or else type of
That's so funny.
So yeah, it absolutely took me some time, but also not just time. Just it took me. I think I had to mature as a person, right? As a person, as a leader. It just took me some time to understand that you can get a lot more out of people when you're being kind of empathetic and you're leading through. Kind of like empathy first, and people are much more inclined to give you their time, their loyalty, their dedication when they get the same in return.
Yeah, we like to say, when you invest in people, they invest in the business. And I'm not talking dollars and cents, but like emotionally investing in your staff, right? It's incredible the results you get. And that it's also, I'm talking a lot here too, Chris, if you ever want to jump in. But we always used to say too that empathy sort of like trickles down. If you're empathetic as a leader at the top of your company, then different managers, I'm not sure if you had middle management. I mean, you had 75 people. So I imagine there's some level of middle management there. They would, see that you're leading that way and try to emulate that as well. And that kind of everybody is sort of thinking of everyone else in the company as a whole.
Trickles down to your customers as well.
Yeah, and that's true. Actually.
Of course, the way you provide support, the way you interact with your customers. Yeah. So I think it's just good from a leadership perspective to set that tone all the way through your organization.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. Do you want to talk DHH? I feel like
So some of my favorite business books are written by David Heinemeier Hansen and Jason Fried. So I think of Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, Remote.
Yeah, Remote's great.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them. And so you guys are a Ruby on Rails shop. Are you guys reading the same books that I'm reading?
Absolutely, not just books. We definitely follow DHH, and I love his approach to simplicity. Doing less but accomplishing more. Kind of like being smart about what you do with simplicity, and it really translates into the technology and into like Ruby on Rails framework. We're big fans. We've always been a Ruby on Rails shop, and we joke that we want to be like Basecamp.
Basecamp. Because you mentioned, right, that I think, wasn't it Basecamp was an internal tool for those guys?
Yeah, I think so.
And then it was something that spun out. And
So what's a really funny anecdote. So when Dave and I wrote our book, we wanted to get it out in the market. And part of it is to get some endorsements from other authors that you like. So Dave reached out to his favorite authors, and one of mine, the top one on the list, was DHH and Jason Fried. So I made a video and I sent it to them, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could get them to read our book and give us a quote? And they very politely said no, but very politely said no.
They
which was great.
They responded, which was very nice of them, because there was a lot of crickets, I think, out there.
Yeah, they basically said that they get a stack of books every week of people that want them to read their books, and they just can't keep up. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get to the top of their reading list.
But I love their philosophical approach. Some of my favorite things, one of our big ones that we talked about, like I think maybe every day or like every other day, at least a couple times a week, was how we did customer service. And there's one in either Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work or Remote, I can't remember. but it would say, there's a customer support token, and on the one side it's no big deal, and on the other side it's the end of the world. Okay, so as a customer support, that's every issue, and whatever side you choose, the customer chooses the opposite. Yeah. So if you say it's not a big deal, then the customer is going to go nuclear and say, it's the end of the world. And if you say it's the end of the world, they tend to go, it's okay, it's no big deal. And I found that was so true, even in my everyday interactions, like in my personal life. I find that if I have an issue or something and it's like legit, and somebody comes back to me and they're like, "Oh, we are so sorry. What makes this right?" Like, I'm always like, "Oh, don't worry about it." But if it's not like that, I'm always like, "Oh, here comes the pain train." You know what I mean? So anyway, we love those guys too. So it is pretty cool that you professionally, I'm sure you've learned a lot from them there. But you could also like literally follow the coding environment that I think DHH wrote Ruby on Rails, right?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was the original author of Ruby on Rails.
So that you're like all in on these guys.
Absolutely. And I mean, one big factor is that they have like they put a huge focus on developer happiness, right? And that's the whole ethos around the fact that like programming should be enjoyable. And like Ruby on Rails reflects this very much by making, like kind of common tasks much easier and more intuitive for developers. And that's why my team loves Ruby on Rails. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. That's nice to hear. We don't have a ton of time left, so I have two more questions I want to ask today. One was a really interesting story I read about you and your team. So you mentioned that you're Russian. In 2022, there was and then you went to Ukraine, and then you went to Israel. So you've had this, obviously you're very worldly, but you met in 2022, there was the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And I read somewhere that you moved all of your staff in Russia to Georgia. Is that accurate? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And really, you know what, before I do, I just want to thank you for bringing up this subject. I feel like there's a certain level of exhaustion with this war. I mean, obviously it's going on almost 3 years. And I love the fact that we can continue talking about it, because people should be aware that the war continues. It rages on more than ever. And, Ukraine definitely still needs a lot of our support. So
of course.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but yes, absolutely. So as Russia attacked and started the war against Ukraine, I clearly remember those first few days, because we, like, our entire company, we were in this like sense of disbelief, because we thought we kind of like were keeping an eye on what's happening kind of in the weeks prior to, but we never could have even imagined that something like this would happen. And so I think we made that decision within the first 3 days, as we understood that it's not just kind of like a local isolated conflict, but as Russia started to really, progress and kind of move into Ukraine, I immediately said, look, however long this is going to last, we have to take a stand immediately. And we were actually one of the first companies to react by saying, we're not going to send any money to Russia. And look, I understand that it's laughable, right? Like the salaries we pay to our employees is not that much, right? In terms of, as in, the amounts, right? That we send over. It's not that much. But in my opinion, I did not want my money or the money of my clients to end up in the Russian economy, to participate in taxation, to participate in the market, and kind of like be kind of implicit in this war machine, right? And so to me, it was super important to say, you know what, we're taking a stand against this. On top of it, I mean, as many other IT companies, we employ many young people who are of age, to be kind of called to arms, right? To be mobilized. Right. And so we were also worried about our employees having to be mobilized.
Like literally going to war. Wow. That's insane to think about.
And it did happen. It did not happen immediately, but it did happen later on that year in September. There was like a mass mobilization. So we moved our entire team to Georgia by March. So like within the first month, we basically announced, we said, look, anyone who's willing to come with us, obviously you're welcome. We're going to make sure that we kind of find you a place to live for the first month. We're going to make sure to take care of whatever whatever expenses you had associated with the move. So, we've reimbursed for flight tickets, we reimbursed for the first couple of weeks of living arrangements. We helped people on the ground find, daycares or schools for the
Right.
children.
That's amazing.
So it was a lot. Look, I've learned so much about real estate in Georgia. If you have any questions.
Yeah, Georgian real estate, you're pretty good these days. Yeah.
But also, we also established the Georgian entity with the hope that if our people are going to be employed by a legal Georgian entity, it will help them gain either like citizenship or
Right.
like a permit to stay for a prolonged amount of time. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The Georgian government itself is, they have to figure out who they want to be.
Sure,
right?
sure. I'm sure it's complicated for them being next door to Russia as well, right? So
absolutely, but
right.
they
Long
have their
history.
own set of problems. So we were not able to, kind of bring any long-term stability to our employees, but we were able to move them all to Georgia. We actually opened up a new office in Batumi. And today, so like 2.5, almost 3 years later, many of our employees have moved on to other countries.
Okay.
So not everyone had decided to stay in Georgia because of the aforementioned reasons.
Sure.
Yeah, we still have our office in Batumi. We still have a good amount of people in Georgia. Anyone who decided to either return to Russia or stay in Russia, we unfortunately had to part ways with.
Wow.
For the reasons I mentioned before.
I so admire this. I think this is, for one thing, it gives a good insight into your principles and into your dedication to the things you believe in and standing up for what's right. And I think that's super remarkable because I feel like the opposite can sometimes be true in sort of like capitalist societies where, oh, well, we're going to sell Coca-Cola to the warlords because, we're like, hey, they drink Coke too, right? But in this case, it's like, no, I got my company, I have my place in the world, and I'm going to take a stand for the things I believe in.
And unfortunately, I have to say that I know many companies who've done it on paper, so to speak, right?
Sure.
So they've kind of like relocated their headquarters or they've established a new entity in another country, but they still maintain employees in Russia. And I don't support that because really you're just being very fake about your principles. So to me, it was a matter of principle. It was a matter of, I can sleep at night knowing that I've done my part. Like it may not be enough. But also, going back to my employees, I've given them an opportunity not to be stuck in that.
Like it's incredible how far you were willing to go for your employees. Like that's amazing to me too. Like it's not that. Like I actually don't. I like to believe I would do what you did in the similar circumstances. We never had employees in Russia or anything like that. But that is a remarkable thing to do. So I just think, kudos, because that's so impressive to me that you're willing to do that.
Thank you.
And now our final question, because we're out of time here, but our last question for today. We got a lot of entrepreneurs listening today, a lot of founders. What is one sort of big startup myth or key learning that you want them to leave with here today?
I want to see our startup world or the industry itself to start celebrating not just the big unicorns, not just the companies that raise tons of money but never turn a profit, but actually putting more attention and celebrating the companies that are profit first companies that are, maybe not $1 billion in valuation, but, making a solid revenues, 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20 million. These are all awesome, sustainable businesses that are being built for growth, that delight their customers with their products and services. And I truly believe these are the real heroes. They're not, kind of unsung heroes of the startup community.
We love this. We've been talking a lot about the concept of the mighty middle. And this is exactly what you're talking about. These sort of, somewhere from, $5 to $50 million, a year businesses that are sort of the beating heart of the economy, as opposed to those unicorns. So
absolutely. So I just want to see more celebration of those companies. I want to read about them in the news, in the media.
Even so, I suppose the takeaway there is, folks, even if you are not a unicorn and you don't have a path to being $1 billion company, you are still legit. You are still a real startup, and don't be discouraged by
I think I sprained my neck. I was nodding so hard.
Cool. Sweet.
Agreement with
Sweet. We got some Robaxa set over there. Producer Graham. Come on. Chris is an old dude, so it's all right. Anyway, thank you, Natalie. Absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And folks, that is another episode of Startup Different. I'm Dave. He's Chris. Please catch us on social, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.